The first memory I have of the Harry Potter series is from reading Order of the Phoenix. It took me a few tries to get into the series, and when I finally did, I was still fairly young, but I very clearly remember reading Order of the Phoenix in my first elementary school, on the staircase leading from upstairs to downstairs, crying, bawling, sobbing over the death of Sirius Black. That was the first time I had read a book in which someone who was not evil or in other way treated poorly, at least in terms of morally, died. And I couldn't believe that someone who was so good and was so important and just meant so much to Harry and to me and to everyone could possibly have died in the middle of the series. And that was a very defining moment for me as a reader, as a person, that not everything always works out happily. And that is definitely one of the most important things that I learned from the first time I read the Harry Potter series.
This is Potter Watch, a podcast where we keep the magic alive and stay one step ahead of you-know-who. We had a great time in episode 1 exploring the idea of love as a weapon and how things go wrong when we make power and control our reason to be. Join us this time to find out the answer to last week's trivia question and dive back into the pensieve with our special guest, Matt Schwab. Matt has chosen Lupin's Tale by Oliver Boyd and the Remember-Alls as his Wizard Rock tune, and he'll walk us through the Harry Potter canon with an eye towards friendship and courage. It's 2016, and the world was never more in need of inspired Harry Potter fans. So take a break from your Quidditch practice, loosen up that house tie, and let's get inside the pensieve. All right, I'd like to introduce our special guest for episode 2, Matt Schwab from Winnipeg, Manitoba.
It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, so things don't always turn out the way we planned, huh?
No,
they don't always
it'd be
go
wonderful
well.
if they did.
Yeah.
I'd be very much a fan of that.
Yeah.
But sadly, that is not how it goes.
Yeah. Well, I hope that this episode turns out real well.
Here's to it.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. So I hear that you're Hufflepuff.
Indeed.
And how do you come by your sorting?
Well, I came by Hufflepuff first from Pottermore.
Okay.
And I was mildly disappointed at the time because I was very convinced I was a Ravenclaw.
Oh.
Because I loved reading, I loved learning things.
Yeah.
But then actually reading the introduction letter in Pottermore for Hufflepuff, and I read that and was like, that I do very much care more about being loyal and being a good friend than I do about books and cleverness.
Mm-hmm.
So after reading that letter, I totally embraced my Hufflepuff nature, and I'm very proud that sorting happened because I feel more connected to Hufflepuff than I do any other house, for sure.
Well, good for you. Let's see, our first question's related to houses that you might identify with, but getting a little more specific, I'd like to ask you, what Harry Potter character do you identify with? Is it a Hufflepuff?
I'll get back to that in a second. But for the longest time, the immediate answer was Luna, who Ravenclaw, indeed. My old house. However, I'd say that she's still probably the character I admire the most, but the character I relate most to is Ron. And there was a theory I saw once saying that Gryffindor is a house that you can choose to be in, that the bravery comes from wanting to be in Gryffindor, and that, therefore, the Golden Trio could have been in the other 3 houses. Harry being a Slytherin, Hermione being a Ravenclaw, which would have surprised no one, and Ron being a Hufflepuff.
Sure.
So, with that in mind, I like to consider myself a very good and loyal friend, but I know that I'm far from perfect in that respect, as unfortunately are the most of us. I can get jealous, I can get angry, I can make bad decisions, but in the end I like to think that I always try to fix those mistakes, to make up for them, and to go back to where I know is the right place for me. And to me, that is what Ron stands the most for. His defining characteristic to me isn't that he left them in the forest, it's that he came back to them in the forest.
Yeah, he came back. Sure. Sometimes the harder thing to accomplish is to change your mind.
Exactly. Like to admit that you made a mistake by leaving and sucking in your pride and going and doing what you know to be the right thing.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been a Harry Potter fan?
Ooh, that's a wonderful question. I first attempted to read the book when I was 7, first completed it when I was 8, and I'm now over 8. It's been 10 years. I'm an old person now.
Yeah.
This is weird.
Weird looking back.
Yeah, no, I've been a Harry Potter fan for over half my life.
Yeah.
That's a crazy thing to say out loud.
So
wonderful.
I was going to ask you if you could think of a time pre-Harry Potter where it was harder to change your mind. But can you even think of a time before?
Well, definitely I can think of a time before Deathly Hallows, because that was the first book I got to read when it was new. Mm-hmm. And that was probably also the first book I could read where I fully understood most of what I was reading. Mm-hmm. Because reading these books when you're 8 and 9, they're wonderful adventures, but there's always so much more to them than meets the eye.
Sure.
And so I definitely say that reading Deathly Hallows helped me to become both like more confident in being a friend, I suppose, and being able to find it in myself to admit to my mistakes and go out and try and fix them.
So since reading Deathly Hallows, you'd say there have been times where you could admit your mistakes and fess up to a friend and
absolutely
turn things around.
Yes, or at least try to.
Try to, yeah. And Ron would be an inspiration for that.
100%.
Yeah. Is there a character that you think would struggle the most with changing their mind, that is the antithesis of Ron in that way, that quality?
So as you said earlier, obviously Draco is not really one to admit that he's wrong. But on kind of the flip side of that coin, I'd argue that Harry doesn't really change his mind all that often. Mm. Like, think about from the first book.
Yeah.
Percy says that Snape, and Harry immediately gets a bad reaction off of Snape.
Yes.
He never lets go of that bad reaction.
No, he does not.
Like, even at the end, he ends up naming his son after Snape, after all, which is something that will forever live in infamy amongst this fandom. But up until that point where Snape literally dies for him, he's not exactly one to live and let live, forgive and forget. And also with Dumbledore, again, like, he immediately trusts Dumbledore, which isn't a bad idea. Dumbledore is certainly wise, knows what he's doing. But it takes a lot of evidence for Harry to kind of start to realize that perhaps Harry's best interests weren't always Dumbledore's first interests. And that's not to say that it's a bad thing, because Dumbledore was obviously doing what he thought was best to protect everyone. Mm-hmm. But Harry's reaction, especially with like reading Rita Skeeter's book and whatnot, because Rita Skeeter is obviously the least reliable narrator we could possibly have. We can give belief to Harry not believing what he's reading, but it takes a long time for him to begin to realize. I'd say probably the conversation with Aberforth to realize that Dumbledore isn't the saint that Harry always thought he was.
You mentioned a quality of Luna's that you admire.
Yes.
That was to be herself.
She very much does not give any indication of caring too much what anybody thinks, and certainly not people she herself doesn't care about.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure if Ginny said something to her, or if Harry or Hermione said something to her, she'd like listen, and if it were helpful, absolutely she would use that to try and better herself. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to everyone calling her Loony Lovegood and hiding her shoes around the castle, she's completely unperturbed by that. She just carries on with her business and has complete confidence in who she is. And to me, that is just an ideal that I would love to achieve. Mm-hmm. Because Draco definitely has a lot to live up to. Mm-hmm. He could be argued to have a lack of self-confidence, but not, like, I don't think he would have benefited from Luna's, because he he simply wasn't that out there, for lack of a better term. Like, he was always very much following the rules of his father. And
I was going to say, I struggle to see, Draco really attempting to be himself or know himself.
Yes, no, he certainly doesn't try to act on his own volition. And in that case, self-confidence would come through to him, but having Lucius for a father, I'm not sure if self-confidence could be developed a ton, and whether or not that would pay off for Draco, at least in the short term.
But let's mix things up here with a little bit of Harry Potter trivia.
Bring it on.
Okay. So, we'll start easy.
Watch me get it wrong.
Okay. What 3 animals are suggested as options to bring to Hogwarts on Harry's list of supplies?
That would be a cat, an owl, and I want to say toad. It's either a toad or a frog. I'm going to go with toad.
Excellent. Toad. Yeah. Very good. What did Hagrid buy Harry for his birthday in Diagon Alley?
Hedwig.
Okay. Where did he purchase Hedwig?
The most logical answer in my mind would be Eylops Owl Emporium.
Now, how do you spell Eylops?
EEYLOP''S.
According to its song, what will the Sorting Hat do if you find a smarter hat?
I'm sure this is coming from Harry Potter musical, but I'd say eat itself.
Yes, that's it. All right. If you had a wand with only one spell, what would it be?
So, the selfish part of me wants to say the ability to apparate and disapparate, because that would be so wonderfully handy. Mm-hmm. But in actuality, I would undoubtedly choose a Pisky. Not only because I myself am wonderfully talented at ending up with bruises and small cuts, but because if I could have, you think of your standard role-playing games, nobody wants to be the healer. In real life, I would want to be the healer. That is what I would want to do, rather than the ability to harm, or even with my laziness, Accio would be wonderful to just find the remote.
Yeah.
I'd be down for that. But
I could use that.
In seriousness, I would go with a Pisky.
Uh-huh. And a Pisky does what?
It is a healing spell. It's never seen to a particularly large extent, so I'm sure if someone got disemboweled or something, I'd be fairly helpless. But I think the one standout one from the movie is when Luna finds Harry on the train after Draco stomped his nose in.
Right.
She heals the nose with a Pisky. I suppose I could argue kind of is that Ron is where I'm at in terms of friendship, and Luna is where I want to be in terms of friendship.
Those characters give us a lot of options to identify with.
Absolutely.
They're all at different places with different qualities. Okay. If you were a Hogwarts student, would you want to be pureblood, muggle, or half-blood?
I would definitely want to be a muggle-born, and not only so I can still trick myself into believing that my letter is stuck in the mail somewhere. I say that because, for one, it would just be the most amazing life experience ever to have grown up thinking magic is a fairy tale, to believe that none of that is real, and then to find an owl flying through your window to drop off a piece of parchment with official scroll, official seals and beautiful calligraphy.
A whole new world.
A dazzling place I never knew. And to be invited into that world and to walk into Hogwarts and see a ceiling 100 feet tall, enchanted to look like the night sky, and to see all of that beauty and wonder that I could never have possibly dreamed of beforehand. The experience of discovering all of that for the first time when you have the ability to process it as something new would be astounding. As well, obviously, pureblood's kind of rule the school just by their blood stats, not obviously in any actual way, but just kind of in a biased way. They certainly think they're elite. For one, though, I have a feeling that would bring the Muggleborns very close together by, like, not necessarily having other friends. Of course, not to say that there aren't many wonderful purebloods, like the Weasleys or half-bloods. I can't come up with any half-bloods off the top of my head, except Seamus. Seamus is a wonderful person. Seamus is great. But I believe that despite the hardships that would be found by Muggleborns being considered lesser magicians, is that through the fire, a lot of solid friendships could be forged, I'm certain. And also, this is just in my head, but I truly believe that the Muggleborns would be the best students because they could never get tired of learning.
Right.
Like, finding out that I could turn a teacup into a cat, I'd be good for that for just ever.
Lots
I would
of
keep
discovery.
learning that.
Yeah. Just learning about chocolate frogs and
Yeah.
Quidditch and so much discovery for Harry.
Exactly.
Yeah. What in your own life, your own journey, can you relate to in terms of discovery, times of your life where you've been exposed to a whole new world?
So first off, just to throw this out there, not a promo, but I'd say a place that I was more than I could ever imagined was going to what at the first time was LeakyCon, is now GeekyCon, because I'd grown up, like, my friends, or at least some of my friends, have always, like, enjoyed Harry Potter and books and whatnot, but going there and seeing it just at the front and center, and everyone has the same excited passion about this thing that everyone else, in fact, doesn't think is real. It's real for us. It really is. And so I'd say heading there and just being a part of fandom culture, not only online, not only with myself, but with other people physically there who feel as passionately and feel that this is important as I do, was a completely new experience that was more than my wildest dreams and would not trade for the world. I'm definitely learning about a ton of things. That's adulthood for you, is especially right now, because I still refer to myself as a kid, but I'm an adult, and I get to make my own decisions.
Well, Matt, you're lucky, because one thing that adults get to do, that's part of our podcast here, is to learn about their dark side.
That sounds like a bundle of joy. Let's go for it.
Would you like to learn a bit about your darker side?
Yeah, I'm sure I could manage that.
Yeah? You ready to go to Voldemort's Corner?
Let's go to Voldemort's Corner.
The courage to trust that we can face up to failures with our family and friends isn't always easy to come by. In Erich Fromm's classic, The Anatomy of Human Destructiveness, put out by Henry Holt & Company in 1973, the founder of the psychohistorical movement explores malignant incestuousness, narcissism, and a lack of realism as character traits of Adolf Hitler that crippled him in the wake of his failures as an artist and wannabe architect. He and Tom Riddle share a painful lack of love and compassion early on in childhood, followed by indulgence by benefactors desperate to see them succeed in maintaining paths toward life-giving pursuits. For Hitler, it was his mother, and Tom Riddle, Dumbledore. Dr. Fromm lays bare the pathway of the notorious leader toward a life of destructiveness with scholarly precision and clinical wisdom. He makes a distinction between rational and irrational will. The irrational type sets a course for those of us unable to sustain a life of creativity. Rational will is described as including a sense of realism, discipline, patience, and overcoming self-indulgence, while its opposite as a passionate striving fed by the energy of irrational passions lacking in qualities needed for rational will. In a phrase, irrational will drives and forces us like a slave. Indeed, we see little room in the character of Voldemort for allowing ideas and passions to grow and be cultivated or aged over time. One of the ways Tom Riddle forces things to happen that he desires is through his veneer of charm and consideration. This doesn't win him real friendships, and it was not a life-sustaining path for Hitler either. On their way to self-destruction, these unfortunate souls slip by our radar by presenting themselves, as Fromm puts it, as without horns. We all have horns to hide and need good friends who take us back when we fail. Being real means living in real time with all of our misgivings and plain old foolish choices. It's harder to fess up to messing up and stay with our dreams than to descend into destructiveness. But as Harry displayed when he broke the Elder Wand and embraced his friends, there really is no other way. Okay, Matt. Here we are in Voldemort's corner now.
Should we be doing this in parcel mouth, or would that kind of just isolate part of the viewership?
You can if you'd like to continue on by yourself.
I suppose I'd
like to see that
dialogue.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking a bit about what we talked about earlier regarding friendship and being able to patch things up and have the courage to come back. And I was thinking also of Draco. We alluded to Draco not being able to be himself or act of his own volition, and maybe being his father's puppet protege.
Absolutely, and I'm sure that's a pressure felt by all children. It's wanting to live up to their parents' expectations and whatnot.
Yeah.
But certainly Draco had some unfair expectations placed on him.
You don't say.
Well, I mean,
murdering the headmaster.
Yeah, I feel like at any age that's a hard thing to do, but at 16, one thing that really helps is that, especially when you're young, your friends are more or less all your own age. So they're having a lot of the same experiences as you, a lot of the same first experiences as you are. And so having that group to kind of go through these changes with together helps you each navigate your own way through those changes. And if we look at the golden trio of Ron, Hermione, and Harry. I didn't start with Harry. That was odd.
Yeah.
It's because I relate to Ron so much.
Yeah, and you started with Ron, right.
But I'd say that they're definitely very good friends there for each other. They're always supporting each other. They're not afraid to have dialogues and whatnot. And when you look at Draco's trio of him, Crabbe, and Goyle, you never see Draco so much as having the slightest discussion with them.
Yeah.
He's telling them what to do.
Yeah.
And also one of the greatest improvised lines in the series is Malfoy saying, "I didn't know you could read."
Yeah. Not very intimate.
No, so that just goes to show that, first of all, Draco isn't really that particularly nice to them, but also that they're not that close by any means at all.
They don't really know each other.
And so that just helps to kind of further isolate Malfoy, or Draco, outside of the beliefs of his household, and also, to a lesser extent, of his Hogwarts house. Because Slytherin himself was noted to be particularly fond of purebloods.
Is there something particularly powerful or special, maybe magic, that perhaps Voldemort didn't have when it comes to the strength or the courage to come back and fess up to when you've left your friends behind or hurt them, or
to quote
them down?
To quote the song from the last episode,
Yeah.
"The weapon we have is love."
Yeah.
And that is something Voldemort never particularly knew. His mother wasn't there for him. We have on record that he was conceived by a love potion, and so he has a lesser ability, if any ability at all, to feel love, and for another extent, for the ability to feel loved. And that goes to show that we don't know much of his life before he was Voldemort. Like, we don't get a ton of backstory aside from what we see in the Pensieve. But what we do see is he's incredibly charismatic, incredibly charming. I'm sure he would have had no problems making friends, but we're never told about any of those friends. We're never given any indication to see that he has friends. Like, the closest thing to a friend we can see of his is Bellatrix, and that to call that a friendship might be overstating things a little bit. That is very clearly an unhealthy obsession that is entirely one-sided. So definitely the lack of friends could have, or the lack of ability to experience friendship, could have played a not insignificant role in shaping Tom Riddle into who he became.
And I can't think of someone who was feared the most when it comes to admitting that you'd done something wrong, let alone to admit to doing something wrong to Voldemort.
Right. Like, Voldemort, along with love, doesn't really know much about mercy, I'm sure. And we can just look to Draco's fears in Book 6. About he needs to do this, or else his family is dead. That's very much showing that Voldemort does not have the slightest bit of empathy for what he's making anyone do. In fact, he purposely chooses Malfoy to get back at Lucius for failing in the Department of Mysteries.
So what could be the corollary to that with someone who let's imagine a loving relationship?
Well, loving relationships do not involve getting other people to murder people. That is very much a staple of a not loving relationship. Okay. Murder should never be involved with love. That's
I'll give you that.
Not how it works.
Well, maybe you just answered my question.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, what in a loving relationship, when you have something to fess up to, what is it that you know that allows you to do that? And maybe it's that you know that you won't be murdered.
Yes, that is. Not being murdered is something I enjoy. It's something I'm pretty sure everyone enjoys.
Yeah.
So that knowledge of bodily safety is nice.
It's got to be more than that.
Of course, it's more than that. I'd say, like, to admit that you're wrong about something is the statement that you realize that your belief at the time, or your arrogance, or your belief in you were right, is not as important as the person you wronged is to you. And I think I phrased that not as well as I wanted to. But I guess what it's saying when you say you're sorry is, I recognize that I did something wrong and I hurt you, and I don't want to hurt you. I care about you. Hurting you is not something that I want to do. And this is my pledge to not hurt you in the future. It comes with the unspoken knowledge that you are going to hurt the person in the end, because none of us are perfect as much as we try to be. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to do things we don't intend to do. But that sorry is the promise that I care for you, and I'm going to do my best to do what is best for you. And to accept an apology, that also requires a lack of pride. Because I'd argue that when one is hurt, the pride says, I've been hurt. That was not okay. The person who did that is not okay. That's not going to happen again, and I'm going to make sure of that. And so to accept an apology, you have to suspend that hurt that you felt, that hurt that you truly do believe is rightly held. And I'm not going to say that it's not, because of course it is. But it requires one to suspend their own pride to accept an apology simply because you're putting your trust in someone else once more, despite having perhaps been given a reason not to.
Okay, so I like this theme of noticing, well, how we respond when we're hurt. And we talked about the difference between feeling hurt and then wanting to hurt someone else, and feeling hurt and just not wanting to be hurt again.
Right. And the books don't touch on that like a whole ton. It's not a huge theme brought up, but I'd argue that if any character could be seen to display that difference, it would be Cho Chang, because she is devastated by Cedric's death, as anyone would be if they lost someone so important in their lives. And throughout Order of the Phoenix, she is a very hard person to get along with. And that's not because she's purposefully trying to isolate herself from other people. Like, if you look at her dealings with Harry, obviously Harry's interested. And as was kind of brought up in Goblet of Fire, she has at least some small interest back at him, because if Cedric hadn't asked her first, it's implied that she would have gone with Harry.
Right.
But she isn't able to be there for Harry. And I don't believe that in any way that's due to resentment to Harry or any desire to pass on the pain that she feels. It's that she can't be there for Harry because she doesn't even have the ability to be there for herself with all that she's dealing with. She's in so much pain that she can't open herself up to let go of that pain because of the fear that it could lead to more pain coming in. I just stood up for Cho Chang. That was not something I was expecting to do walking into this.
Yeah.
Not that I have anything against Cho, but no one particularly has strong feelings for Cho. Aside from Harry, of course. She kind of drops off the face of the map after Order of the Phoenix, doesn't she? We don't really explore her that much after that.
No.
That's unfair to Cho. I'm just going to live and die on this mountain. I didn't know I was on top of this mountain. But Cho was not treated as well as she should have been with what she went through. Like, it's not quite the same, because obviously they wouldn't have been together as long as these two had been. But look at Fred and George. We basically unanimously consider that to be one of the saddest separations by death in the entire series.
Yeah.
Obviously, Fred and George have a bond that could never be recreated. Please do not get me wrong on that point. But Cho and Cedric were dating for a while. They were presumably getting quite close. They cared deeply for each other.
Then he's murdered.
Murdered out of nowhere. Like, it's not even coming from the middle of a war where death is not wanted or desired, but kind of acknowledged as something that could happen. Now, this is the first casualty of the Second Wizarding War. And Cho has to deal with that alone. Because the person most reaching out to her is Harry, who, love him as we may not have had entirely her intentions at heart because of his own intentions romantically. And then there's the world telling her that her boyfriend did not die by the hands of Voldemort, that it was some fluke accident brought on by a tradition where they were told going in, this could be deadly. Her pain is just entirely written off by the entire wizarding world. I did not know I felt this passionately about this issue until right now. Go Cho. You deserve better from everyone. And don't you forget that.
So Cho doesn't end up at the end in the happily ever after sequence.
Well, we don't really know. She's definitely not in the 19 years later sequence, but neither is Luna. So There were many characters left out of 19 Years Later.
Who do you see? Cho and Luna? Who do you see?
No.
Who do you see
Nothing
Cho
common.
ending up with?
Oh, I would presume no one from Hogwarts, and it's thrown out. Actually, Hank Green in his song, "Dead Boy's Girlfriend," also belittles Cho. Come on, am I'm alone on this mountain. It is my mountain. I'll climb up to this mountain with me. I could use some company. But yeah, no, refers to her probably being a boring muggle's wife. Yeah, she's going to be.
After that.
Yeah, the entire wizarding
wizard
world.
boyfriend's murdered by Voldemort.
Yeah, and the entire wizarding world just completely disregards her. I wouldn't want to marry a wizard after that either. I would totally want to go elsewhere where either I can forget about that, or I can tell it to someone who has no bias and will be there for me despite what all of the propaganda machine had to say, because they didn't know of that propaganda machine.
Go Cho.
Go Cho.
Tonight I will change into what I hate the most. This sickness that takes over my mind kills me inside. When all that I want is something more, or something
Last episode's trivia question was, what school would Harry have gone to if he wasn't accepted into Hogwarts? The answer is Stonewall High. Are you excited about the upcoming opening of The Cursed Child and Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them? Well, here at Potter Watch, we're excited to hear about how you are channeling your Harry Potter excitement into real-life adventures. So send us an email at potterwatchmail@gmail.com if you would like to be our next special guest. Potter Watch is produced in Ithaca, New York by Tony Catraccia.